Hello and welcome to the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast. My name is Joel Sked and I'm delighted to be joined by Craig Cairns. I can't remember the last time we did a podcast together, Craig. It's been a while.
Yeah, exactly. Are you really delighted, or are you just like tired to see me again and have to speak to me again?
I've had a couple of weeks off, so 2 podcasts in space of like 12 hours is not a chore. We are here not to focus on Hearts, but to discuss. I was going to say the only game from the Scottish Premiership, but apparently there were 3 games, so I'm sure we'll mention a couple of them. Where would you like to start?
I think it's only right that we speak about Kilmarnock first.
Yes.
The game involving Kilmarnock, mainly because of Kilmarnock, because they just seem to be plugging along really well at the moment. I know that the league has nowhere near settled yet.
Yeah.
Third place is changing a lot. Lots of draws. There's just that it's all very, very tight at the moment. But Kilmarnock have lost once in 90 minutes under Kettlewell in 13 matches or something like that, and that was via a dodgy penalty. So yeah, there's something really clicking there. I mean, I don't think anybody looked at that at the start of the season and thought that's a bad appointment. But I don't think anybody was really that sure about how much of a fit it would be. I think he came in with a decent pedigree, but it seems so far it's been a really good fit.
I think he was just an underwhelming appointment, and then just the nature
after
of
the previous ones, you mean?
Yeah, and also off the back of just the way it ended at Motherwell and the nastiness, if for want of a better phrase or word to describe that. But I'm glad you said Kilmarnock, because when I wrote my notes out, I did have Kilmarnock first. And have they been? And I'm asking you this you can look at it as a positive or negative in terms of teams, but have they been the surprise of the season so far in the Premiership?
Yeah, I think so. I think given the statistic that I just kicked us off with there, I think that I certainly didn't see that coming. I mean, you could maybe look at the 4 League Cup matches and think, okay, they've gone unbeaten in that. That's maybe not like a huge surprise. But then to follow that into the league, and they should really be unbeaten. They should still be one of the unbeaten teams in the league if it wasn't for that, like I say, that pit, which there was a similar one. I mean, similar but different, but similar as in the handball wasn't given for a penalty at Rugby Park on Saturday because of close proximity, I think they said, which probably should have been the case against Celtic. But I'll move away from that penalty. It sounds like I'm really, really bitter about that. But yeah, it seems to be that he's gone in and without watching too many 90 minutes of Kilmarnock this week, it seems to be fairly safety first. He's got a solid base there. They've got a good back 3 despite the players that they have lost in the close season. They've upgraded in the goalkeeper department. I was worried a wee bit when Brandon got injured because he had started the season well. They've gone out and got James Brown, who I think is just as good, if not maybe better. And they have options up front as well. Anderson, they started the season with the 2 big guys up front. Anderson came in last week and got a goal, and then he was key to the moment in the scoring here. But it's an absolutely amazing lung burst and run from Watson to get the goal. But it's a really good save from George.
Yeah,
he can't really do much else. He's done everything he can, but the goal's made by the shot from Anderson, which is arrowing into the bottom corner.
Yeah, absolutely. And Anderson was obviously involved in both of the goals, and always been a big fan of his. I thought he would have kicked on a bit more at Kilmarnock when he went there, but you do. I don't know if Dackers and Daniels. I think there's maybe just a better balance when you've got someone like Anderson. You kind of, without pigeonhole them, because I know they've got more qualities than that. Because like Anderson, even though he's like a small striker compared to Dackers or Daniels, but He's really lively, puts himself about. I think he uses his body really well. And then the two big strikers are more than just target men. But Anderson, I just think, gives just a different dimension. He's not going to be a 15 goal a season striker, but I think he's going to be he's always going to be like an effective Premiership striker, especially for probably a team, a middling Premiership team, but certainly at the moment Kilmarnock aren't middling. And Watson, it was noticed it on the replay and then I think Neil McCann highlighted on the sports scene, just that dynamism, pace to get into the box, but more so just like the reading of the situation. I think that's really positive for a player so young, and I think it's really encouraging both in terms of for Kilmarnock and Watson and the potential that he's got, that he does feel just like a bit of a throwback as just a box-to-box player, and you're seeing him starting. His goal scoring record from midfield is good. Especially
all different goals as well.
Oh yeah, definitely. You can score a screamer. He can get in. He gets into just like he's just got a knack for being in the right place at the right time. Craig Anderson, speaking to him, he compared them loosely to kind of Frank Lampard and that ability, and it's really exciting to see him kick on this season.
Yeah, and just go back quickly what you're talking about, Anderson and Dackers. Stephen Thompson on the highlights as well mentioned the big and small partnership, and we do seem to be in an age where a lot of these old-fashioned things are coming back into fashion, even at the top level, like kicking the ball at a touch from centres and long throw-ins and all these kind of things, big number 9s. So maybe the big man, little man partnership is one of these other trends that's going to come back. But I couldn't agree more about Watson. It's just it's really exciting to see. That's one of the other things that's a good fit at Kilmarnock with Kettlewell, I suppose, and maybe one of the things that got him the job is that the minutes that he gave to younger players last season, it was one of a couple of clubs that was an anomaly that gave a fair few minutes to or above X amount of minutes. So to go in there and with the talent that they've got, not just Watson, but the guys coming around. Is it Ethan Brown and Ben Brannan? Guys like that coming through. So all seems to be going very well at Kilmarnock at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point on Stuart Kettlewell, and that willingness and comfort at giving players minutes. I think you look at the guys who are 21 and under in the Scottish Premiership, and the two players, so only 5 players in the Scottish Premiership have age 21 or under. Sorry, let me rephrase that. So there are only 5 players 21 and under who have played at least 300 minutes so far in the Scottish Premiership. 2 of those are Kilmarnock players, and Ben Brannan and David Watson. And then if you go no minimum, there's and then Ethan Brown is in there when you take away like the 300 minutes rule, which again is really encouraging. And then you also have to look at Kilmarnock. Their business has been really good in the window, where you've got guys who have come in and had a strong positive impact. You talked about the upgrade in between the sticks. Max Struijk, was impressed with him when he was at Livy. He's come in, he's been really good. George Stanger, he was at Hamilton when he was younger, and I remember speaking to someone at Hamilton, and there was high hopes for him. It didn't really seem to kind of kick on, but he's come in and he's really settled in really well, considering they've lost someone as important and vital as Stuart Finlay. But Robbie Dees. It's kind of allowed Robbie Dees to play as that left-sided centre-back in a 3. And then you've got Greg Kilty coming back into it, knows the club so well. You mentioned Brown. Like, he's probably been a wee surprise as well, because I think he's just solid enough at Ross County. And then you got the 2 strikers, and Dackers here scores a goal, could have had more. And it was mentioned, I think Stuart Kelwell mentioned it at some point, that they'd been working on his aerial ability, or like his quality in there, because you look at the size of him, it's like, if you can harness that correctly, it's more than just being good in there. It's about reading the game, it's about being aggressive, and if you can add that to his game, he becomes an even better striker. And his header was really good to make it 2-0.
And he went right over to Stevie Frail, so I wonder whether he in particular has been influential in what you were talking about there, in the work that he's been doing in the air, or could just be he's given him some sort of instruction just before that and it's come off, or he's seen something in the game, who knows. But it was nice to see.
It does, looking a wee bit further ahead, and of course making it all about Hearts, because that's our nature. But
it's a tasty one.
The tea, yeah.
Just the atmosphere around it, as well as 2 form teams. It's set up to be a cracker.
I think it's another 5:45 kickoff on a Saturday evening. I do have for 5:30, whatever it is. But it's going to be a massive away support. Kilmarnock will be right up for it. Kilmarnock support will be right up for it with McInnes in the opposition dugout. So yeah, that's really, really exciting.
I avoided the venue last year because I'm up in Dundee, and it's just that wee bit extra. And at the time, there wasn't much riding on them. I think one of them was literally the last game of the season. But I will be making the effort to come down for this one, especially that I've got a 2-week run up before it. I can't really not.
What about St Mirren? What can we say about the Buddies? How big a disappointment were they? Just in isolation of yesterday's game.
I think it's. I mean, you could tell that from what Stephen Robinson was saying after the game. There was no beating about the bush. He was just flat out. They weren't good enough, and I don't think it's anything to worry about too much.
Yeah.
I think the only worry you would have is that don't go out of form before the semi-final. Don't let this good start to the season all go to shit before your biggest game of the season, basically, and a great chance to get to a final as well. Mm-hmm. Not just play in a semi-final, but a great chance, a coin flip to get to a final. So, failing that, I don't think there's really anything to worry about. And I think before and after every game yesterday, managers and pundits were talking about the conditions, and I think the conditions played the part in all 3 of the matches. One of them that we'll come to was a game of 2 halves because of the conditions. Mm. One of them, I think, was a muted affair, partly because it's an Edinburgh Derby, partly because of the conditions, and it was just kind of nabbed by one team at the end. And I think this one was a game where one team played the conditions and another team failed to adjust to them. And Killie were 2-0 up against the wind.
Yeah.
So you're giving yourself no chance there, to be honest.
And I suppose...
And they conceded from their own goalkeeper kick out as well, on top of that, like the first goal. So I think, hopefully for St Mirren's sake, it's just a bad day. It's been a great start to the season for them. They've been more than competitive against teams that are on paper better than them. So I wouldn't be worrying about it too much. It's not a good venue for them either.
No, it's a fucking terrible venue for them. I think I think Kilmarnock had grass the last time that St Mirren won at Rugby Park. Can't remember what year it was. They'd said it on Sports Scene, whoever the commentator was. I think it was Andrew Petrie said it, and I didn't retain that information. But yeah, a long time. But I'm glad you kind of just spoke about it just being, it's a kind of one-off game, and it's one of those where we're so reactionary within football, especially now. It's like, if you just like St Mirren, it's like sometimes you just have off days, sometimes you're just poor. Like, the big disappointment is just looking at the game in itself, where with the conditions the way they are, I would always think St Mirren are a team who I think they're really good at adapting, and when they just have to kind of dig in and be gritty, and you just have to survive the conditions, play it. I would always have St Mirren as one of the teams that you'd fancy most, but it was the fact that they were so disappointing in that environment, which I think is probably the perhaps the biggest frustration for the fans and Stephen Robinson. And you also look at it just how tight the teams are in the Scottish Premiership and the number of draws, etc., etc. If you were to say to St Mirren, you would go through in the League Cup, but that means losing the league is like, fine, who cares? We'll move on and we'll bounce back. And no doubt that St Mirren will bounce back. Is there anything to say about individuals within St Mirren, or is it just a kind of collective disappointment?
I don't think so. I mean, I think you can look at the goals and you can point at things that they've got wrong. Like Gogic doesn't do too well for the first goal, but like you said, you just kind of like. It's not to say that those guys are having bad seasons or anything, and you just chalk it down to a bad day as a bogey ground. Can you have a bogey ground? Let's call it a bogey ground.
Yeah, I think you can.
And just put things right after the international break, basically.
Sorry, I've just seen that. We recorded this during the 3 p.m. games on Sunday, and my foot mob has said that Motherwell are 2-1 up, but no scorer has popped up. Just because I was looking at the lineup for St Mirren, because Robinson, you can see with his probably how frustrated he was with the first half performance. He made a triple sub. I think there's maybe a wee bit of frustration from St Mirren fans that it was Ayunga, who's maybe not had the best start to the season, who remained on the pitch, and Mandron, who has perhaps been the more effective forward, who replaced him at half time. I think there's still, kind of looking ahead, I think there's still more to come from St Mirren, just with the players that they are, with who they have added. They brought Bacchus back in, Ndulu and Dykes-Steele, and and others who they've added, but it'll probably take them time to adapt. And I do think St Mirren will get better. But we will leave it there with the Kilmarnock 2, St Mirren 0, and move on to Dundee United and Livingston. We'll leave the Edinburgh Derby until the end. Who is the happier with that point, Craig?
Oh, 100% Livingston. I mean, I know that they will be disappointed not to. There's not much in it. It's marginal, but I would say Livingston, because all said and done, a point at Tannadice isn't a bad point, even if they maybe could and should have been further ahead when they were on top in the first half. But I think it's much more of a disappointment for Dundee United off the back of the Kilmarnock game and off the back of what looked like a good start to the season. Can't really put my finger on what's happened there, but I don't know. I don't know if you had any idea. I mean, two things that I thought could potentially be: is it the initial like novelty of these players and the unknown of them when they're lining up against the opposition and not knowing exactly how they play? Now there's more evidence of what they can do, and they're sussed them out a wee bit more. Or is it that do you think that one of the things that I was worried about at the start of the season was there seemed to be like a lack of sort of Scottish Premiership experience in the squad, without being one of those needs to know the league types. I think you need some of that in there.
Yeah. And
that was a potential worry. So I don't know if either of those are working theories.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree with that. That was when they were signing these players, and there was all the hand wringing about the lack of Scottish players in a starting 11 for Dundee United. It's like I couldn't care less about that. They can sign players from wherever they want. I don't think it's a Dundee United issue, and I don't think it's a requirement for Dundee United to only sign from UK based or Scottish based players. However, my more concern was having that knowledge within the squad. I do think you need that core where there's an understanding of what it takes to play in Scottish football, especially because we all know it's the environment and the culture you come into. It's different, and it takes time to settle in when you've got so many new players coming in from elsewhere. having to adapt to this new league, it is helpful to have that core who have been there and like done it. And you look at the back four who played on Saturday. I'm going to say back four. I mean, there's three centre backs and the goalkeeper. There isn't that Scottish Premiership experience, and then it's only I always get pronounce his name wrong. Savage, who is in the centre of the pitch. So I think there's only three who were here last season who started, and I do think if United do have a sticky patch and this kind of goes on, I do think there is that element to it, but at the same time, it could be one of those where first half they were just off it. It was an off day and the conditions didn't help. Jim Goodwin was proactive and then they came back and did really well in the second half. It might have been 45 minutes where, right, just need to get back to the drawing board, make a couple of key changes, a couple of big changes with Dolchek and Kamara going off, two guys who've been excellent since coming in, and finding a way to get a result and being unlucky not to win it.
If you beat Kilmarnock, then maybe you can sort of spin it the way you've said there, where you can say, okay, the conditions weren't great, we gave ourselves an uphill battle in the first half, we'll dust ourselves down, we'll go again next week, kind of thing. But off the back of the last game at home against Kilmarnock, it's a bit more, I suppose it's a bit more difficult to throw out excuses like that. But it's not to say that there's nobody in that team that has no know-how or like haven't proven themselves in this league. As you said, there's three of the midfield four showed last season that they're more than capable of being good players in this league. And Savelli, I think you even say the a at the end, Savelli, I believe it is. He almost scored a wonder goal. He didn't. I think what caught up with him there was that he was essentially a defender, basically 1-on-1 with a keeper, and he didn't quite have the quality to put it away. I know he's like a versatile player and he can play across the midfield and he can play in defence, but he did so well to even, after making that run, to even like slightly drop the shoulder and then go. There wasn't much of a challenge right enough, but to like carve out the yard to make the shot, but it was just a bit too much for him. But he had absolutely no support. There was nobody anywhere near him. So yeah, on another day they could have still won it, but yes, it'll be a little bit worrying. Their home form hasn't been the best this season.
No, it's one of those where I think always like Tannadice is a match you always look forward to. I just think Tannadice is a good ground as a fan to kind of like watch games. I think you get a good I don't know. It just has a feel when you're, whether it's watching on TV or watching or going to Tannadice itself. It just has a good feel where it's there's potential for an exciting game. But I think it's important that they do make it a difficult place to go to. Add the cliche. I do want to talk about Cresta's equaliser, because it's probably the best and worst finish I have seen this season. I probably will see all season. It was absolutely shit, but so good at the same time.
Yeah, but it's one of those ones. I mean, who knows? I mean, it maybe hits a body if he manages to strike it cleanly. I mean, they do say that sometimes with very different scenarios, but when like a striker goes through 1-on-1 and then sometimes they'll slightly mishit it and it'll bobble over the keeper's diving hand, and then the analysis is that if they had struck it cleanly, then maybe the keeper saves it. I think there was an element of that about it, but yes, also like a comedy element of it, because it's like he sliced it into the far bottom corner. There was a bit of fortune in that, but I think United deserved at least an equaliser for their. It would have been harsh on Livingston if they'd taken all 3 points, but I think it was fair enough for them to get an equaliser, even if it did come in that manner.
Moving on to Livingston, how do you think they are feeling about their start to the season?
Very frustrated. Very frustrated. As I said, this is a good point, but it's probably a difficult one to to celebrate as a good point because they've been quite hard done by I don't know. I think some of them are debatable. I think a couple of decisions that Martindale has been talking about are definitely debatable. I agreed with him on the Dundee one, but I know that, I mean, I accept that it's not 100%. It's not clear either way. I'm willing to hear the arguments that it was a penalty against Livingston. So a couple of decisions have been debatable, a couple of things he's been saying, but yeah, it's still been quite harsh on them. They've been very close to taking points, or a point from the Hearts game, a point from the Rangers game, and lost them both really, really late. And then to do so well in the first half, and this one forced Dundee United into a change midway through the first half, and then a double change at half time, and then still not come away with the 3 points, I think will be disappointing, even though it's I'll say it again, it's a good point for them. It's a good point for them.
Yeah, because it's the, I think if you, prior to the match, you're asking Livingston, like, would a point be good? And I think there's accepting it will be but then there's that frustration where they've got themselves into such a good position, and in the first half, and then in the second half, they had one shot from long range. That was it. That's kind of all they mustered after the break, and that's something that probably needs to be looked at. So you mentioned the late goals. 3 of the 4 defeats have, I think it was like a 91st minute goal against Hearts, a 94th minute goal against Dundee, or like a 97th minute goal against Rangers, or the other way around. So they've lost 3 points from conceding late goals. But if you look at the underlying numbers, and sorry for being a massive nerd, but in terms of expected goals conceded per 90 minutes, they are way out in front, which is a concern. And then in terms of expected goals scored, I think it's only they have got the second worst in the league. Only Dundee is worse. So just looking at that in isolation, yes, it's only a small sample size with seven games gone, but they are giving up too many opportunities, whether it's just too many, and that's just increasing XG, or too many really good chances, and then at the same time just not creating enough. And you've seen it in their attack, where I still don't think they have that. I think they've got solid players, but they've just not got for example, like a Lyndon Dykes transformative player in the final third at the moment. Stevie May's done really well against Dundee United, especially the first half, as a striker, but he's more of a facilitator, and he is the more he plays, I think the less of a regular goal threat he becomes. Having scored a goal with a slide tackle against Dundee United, and now he was assisting with a slide tackle, which is wonderful. But I do think that this break maybe will be a good time for David Martindale to kind of get his players kind of focused, or not focused, on training ground, and try and find the best blend to get them both better in the final third, or more of a threat in the final third, while also being a bit more solid at the back. Because if those numbers continue, it will catch up with them further down the line.
Stevie May, I was just going to say that he loves Tannadice. I hadn't even made the connection that because of that slide tackle, but I hadn't made the connection that he's added a slide tackle assist to his slide tackle goal. And he looks identical to Pittman as well.
Yeah, it's mental.
They look identical. And at first I thought, like, for a second or two, I thought it was Rudden that had scored, and then I quickly remembered that Rudden's not there anymore, but he looked the same as Liv as well. I should point out that they've been without Ryan McGowan for a couple of games, which is he's quite an important player for them. Not only that, they've been choosing to play Mo Silla there, which is a wee bit of sort of a square peg. I think Shane Blaney, the first game that McGowan was out, probably be corrected here. They did play Shane Blaney there, but then I think Martindale said something about 2 left footers or something like that, and preferring to have Silla there instead. So they've got that working against them, because McGowan's like a very experienced campaigner as well, a very wily sort of operator. So he will be being missed there. I didn't realise. So when you were saying that they're far out ahead in XG conceded, you're meaning they've got the worst, they've got the highest XG conceded?
Yes. So I won't. The last time I tried to share my screen or do something or share the picture, it was a disaster. So they have from, in terms of per 90 minutes, their expected goals conceded is 1.44, and Dun United's next with 1.2. So, but I know that doesn't seem like a big difference, but the graph I'm looking at shows shows Livingston way out ahead in a bad sense. So, that's a concern. Granted that there has to be noted that their season so far, they have played most of, they've been away to United, home to Rangers. I was going to say like away to Aberdeen. They kept the clean sheet. They were fine against Aberdeen, and then home to Hearts and away to Celtic. So they've played some difficult games, and they've got Hibs at Easter Road up next, and then it should kind of hopefully for them have a bit of an easier fixture list. But such is the nature of the Scottish Premiership, those hard fixtures will come around very, very soon once again.
I don't know, and you say about Pittodrie, Dundee are making it look like a tough place to go.
They are, yeah. Oh, Dundee, what an absolute shambles there.
Thanks, Dundee.
Yeah.
Thanks for ruining everybody else's fun.
Yeah. Just what Aberdeen needed was Stephen Presley's Dundee. But I'm sure they'll talk about that on whenever the Sunday podcast is being recorded. We'll move on to the final game from Saturday, and that was the 5:45 kickoff at Tynecastle Park as Heart of Midlothian defeated Hibernian Football Club 1-0. Can I say 1-0? 1-0. Craig, this is the only one I've not written notes for. We'll start with Hibs. What can they take from that game? How big a blow is that, considering that it was just the way their season has gone?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. I think within the context of that, it's a tough one to take. I mean, Derby defeats are always going to be difficult ones. Last minute ones always going to be difficult, but Hibs have turned around their mentality in the Derby recently. They got the better of them recently. So a defeat's always going to come in what is notoriously a tight fixture. But it's exactly what you said there. It's the manner of it. It's the same things happening. Like Gray was saying afterwards, some of their supporters are saying afterwards, it's just the same things happening. And what was noticeable, and it was something like, I was speaking to Jamie Borthwick after the game, and he was talking about it, that when the injury time boards went up, that they just dropped a few yards. And I'd noticed something like that. I can't remember exactly when it was or exactly what the passage of play was, but there was a period in the second half where Hibs were looking quite threatening. Now, I know like a couple of them, they were like clear offsides and the play was allowed to go on, and that sometimes gives the sense that there's a bit more happening than there was. But Hibs, but there was a threat, and the best chance of the game was when Boyle was through on the keeper, and other than a really unlucky touch off his knee, he probably puts Hibs ahead with that chance. So it was a bit surprising to me that there seemed a point in the game where Hibs just like you could see it, and I'm sure it was before the injury time board went up that I noticed this. Can't remember how long it was. And then there was like Salinger like feigning injury to try and time waste and stuff. So they were kind of settling, and it felt like they brought it on themselves to an extent. It still took a rare bit of quality in the match, an absolute missile of a cross, and a good finish on top of that to win it. But there was an element that Hibs just totally invited it on themselves.
And do you think that is part of what they are under David Gray? Is that it's not safety first, but just because they are, and I was going to say one-dimensional. They're not one-dimensional, but they play the same shape. They play the same shape, and yes, and all they can play it. They can play it differently. But I look at them as thinking I think they're this, whether this is correct or not, just view them as like, for example, when they were going away in Europe, I thought they would do well away in Europe, which they did, because the way they're set up is that I think they're a kind of really good counter-attacking team that they don't need to dominate the ball, what they can do and have control when they've got certain players in. I don't think those players were playing against Hearts, which was probably the right thing considering what the Derby is. But do you think there's, trying to express my point accurately, but with the way that Hibs are and they're set up, that it's more natural for them to take a point in games? You look at it, they've drawn 5 off their 7 league games, compared to actually just going out and winning it. Whether it is making subs earlier, making tactical tweaks in terms of the shape, or am I reading too much into that?
I think there's an element of that there. I mean, if you compare it to McInnes, I mean, McInnes was saying McInnes didn't want to put too much stress on the substitutions, that they won the game, but he tried to work a scenario that did, in the end, maybe not exactly how he saw it, but he wanted to get Carjota one-on-one against Iredale at some point, or get the ball out, Carjota doing stuff out on that side, and that's where the goal comes from. And you're right, Hibs, and then McInnes will do that a lot. McInnes will change at half time, or he'll switch to a back four, or he'll do these kind of things, where Gray seems a manager that's a bit more reluctant to do those kind of things. But at the same time, you can see why you would do that. It's worked for them last season. When you've got somebody with the pace of Boyle, and you can see that they were trying it in the second half. Another disappointing game in the Derby from Bowie, but the idea there is that then you then give Bowie the space to work in. So, I mean, the theory's sound, it's just not working. But yeah, it felt like and again, this goes with it. I don't watch Hibs from week to week, and I've got more of an eye on Hearts when I'm watching the game for obvious reasons than Hibs. But the subs did seem a bit more like for Hibs, whereas Hearts' ones were a bit more in mind of how to win the game.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think it was an attacking change, and it was one that McInnes, the surprise aspect was that he didn't make it sooner, because he is quite a proactive. He does like to make changes, especially with the 5 subs. In terms of what I found was quite interesting, and come on to speak about one Hibs player that I think stood out for me, but I've found it quite interesting that Hearts were happy to stand off the Hibs centre-backs, especially the first half. And I don't know if that was a case of not wanting to come too high up the pitch, and then if you're pressing them, they would be more than happy to go long to Bowie. Yeah, and then then there's more space for Bowie and Boyle if Hearts kind of overcommit and try and press Hibs.
Yeah, that's what that was something that went through my head when I was answering the last question, and something that I just wrote down there to bring back up again. It was interesting that Hearts didn't press as much as they have other opponents, and I did wonder that. I wondered whether that was they were happy that the centre-backs weren't going to be able to do too much in possession, or whether it was what you've just said there, which is what I was leaning towards more, and feeds into what we were just talking about a minute ago, that Hibs are a good counter-attacking team, and you're inviting what they are good at onto yourself if you maybe press them too high, because McInnes, to an extent, or in some games, is happy to go man for man at the back. But I think maybe sticking with the same shape and going with those players, maybe that would be too much of a risk then against that shape, because there's an extra man in the midfield, and you don't want to be going man for man at the back against Bowie and Boyle, I would say, if then Hibs are going to be shelling it long. I think that's asking for trouble.
I thought Grant Hanley was excellent. He did for Hibs what Halkett did for Hearts. Thought Halkett was better. Was more influential. Not aside from his goal, but thought Hanley was really, really good in the centre of that back three. Before moving on to Hearts, kind of last question was, and this is something speaking to a couple of people in the pub last night, they were asking about just kind of talking about David Gray and how much pressure he's under, and I didn't really consider it, but I think the home at Livingston's are a really big game after the international break, just because Hibs have only won one game in the league so far, and they do need to start picking up wins, but it doesn't feel that David Gray is under that amount of pressure, considering the position they were in like 12 months ago and the transformation.
Exactly. We've been here.
I just thought it was like, I think it's just been us kind of just an uneven, kind of slow start to the season. But also, you look at it in fine margins as well, because McKinnon said there's nothing in the game. There's nothing in the game, and on the flip side, that could be in a transfer. If the Hibs had won it with Boyle, could be in a transformational result for them, and everyone's talking about how good a start to the season it was. But it was Hearts who grabbed the winner. Can Hearts win the title, Craig?
No, they can't. No,
Celtic are still not winning against Motherwell as we record this, going into the 80th minute.
Just like we're talking about David Gray shouldn't be under pressure, we should be talking about Hearts' title credentials quite yet, because it's early in the season, and you can get these kind of runs at any point in the season. It's just when they happen right at the start, people get excited because there's a league table displaying it all. But if you are 2/3 into the season and you've got 40 points on the board, and then you lose 5, 6, or you don't win for 6, 7, 8, or whatever it is, then there's not the same sort of worry or like noise around it all than there is at the start of the season, I find. I think Hearts have made a very good start. They have, McKinnon said it himself yesterday, they're not really battering anybody. A lot of the games have been tight. That can turn very, very quickly. We've not seen how Hearts respond to defeat or adversity yet. We've seen them respond to adversity within matches, but not like conceding a last-minute goal in a defeat themselves, for instance. We've not seen anything like that. So, yeah, I'd be keeping my powder dry on Hearts now.
that makes fun of us. But I do think it's been an aspect of McInnes because...
I say that it's 2-2 still at Celtic Park. So
there's not been a lot of kind of continuity within the schedule, because didn't play in the leagues, because there's been the 2 League Cup Saturday rounds. There's been an international break, a second one coming up, and it's been what we kind of said yesterday. It's been like a stop-start, especially when you're probably wanting to play more games with this momentum. But I do think we'll certainly learn a lot more with the next kind of group of fixtures. So there's between the Saturday 18th and Sunday the 9th, there's 5 games, and then you come back after the next international break. There is in the space of like this between the end of November and the end of December, I think there's about 10 games or 8, 9, 10 games. So it'll be that when the schedules gets more intense, we'll certainly learn a hell of a lot more about it. But like the only thing you can do, especially with the way the other teams are playing, is just pick up points, create as much of a gap as possible, where possible. In terms of the game yesterday, is there anything you learned about Hearts?
Oh, that's a good question. I'll tell you, like, one thing that stood out to me that I really like, it's just a wee thing, but I kind of like how, I like his use of Steinvender so far. I like how, because McEntee has been carrying a bit of an injury, so there seems to be an agreement in place at the moment where McEntee goes out and puts a shift in, and then either he tires or he starts feeling in his foot or whatever it is, and then Steinvender comes on. And then either he slots in seamlessly or he improves Hearts. And I think it was more evidence that, I wouldn't go as far as to say that McInnes got the team selection wrong, but they didn't play as well as they had in the previous two matches.
Yeah.
But it was more evidence that he is able to judge the flow of a game and see things. And I'm sure there's lots of input. I mean, he does drop in the name of Alan Archibald and Paul Sheeran sometimes, and I'm sure they have input as well. But they have an ability to see what's going on in a game and to make tweaks. It's not always going to work for them, but it was another bit of evidence that he has got some nous in this league that Hearts have been missing for a couple of managers, I think.
Yeah, and I do think he's benefiting from a really, and like when we're talking about title challenge and stuff like that, and I do think it's when you and naturally get compared to 20 years ago with the 05-06 season, and well, that was a better starting 11. I think Hearts are benefiting from a better squad. Like this time around with a positive, with a strong start to the season, and we've seen that in the way.
I mean, it was a better start in 10. I think there was like that one position that kept getting changed under the Burnley team.
Right side of midfield, as is this season. But it's
plus ça change.
He's able to. We've seen it with, but just with the depth of the squad, is that he's been able to impact off the bench, and that's been really positive. And I think that quality of what about it today is that. You look at, for example, Rangers. I think Rangers have to be perfect under Russell Martin to win a game. It's a terrible place to be. Whereas a good team, a really good team,
drawn with Falkirk, mate.
Drawn with Falkirk, exactly. So a really good team is able to win games, can win games when they are not perfect. And I think Hearts have got that quality, and it should be able to take us a long way. I think. What's really encouraging is this team there's loads of room for improvement. Still the record signing to come back in. Islam Chesnikov to be added in January as well. So yeah, it's really, really encouraging, and it's like yesterday again. You have to reiterate it was a very close match. It was nothing between the teams. It was heading for 0-0. But in the context of the way the season's gone, it's massive, and it just continues that momentum, that excitement, enthusiasm that's kind of wrapped itself around Tynecastle and Hearts fans.
Yeah, and just enjoy it while it lasts. I mean, I know that there's certain people within Scottish football that would like to see it sustained. There's certain people that would like to see it
come crumbling down,
all fall apart. And I know that like some people were like the same when it was Aberdeen last season, but I think when you're in that situation, regardless of which team you are, when you're in that situation, you just enjoy it until while it lasts. Just ride the wave.
I'm going to enjoy as much as I can until Aberdeen and Hibs fans are back in my mentions, and noise and much, which is actually absolutely fair enough. The only last thing I would say was
enjoy it without leaving any receipts. That's the moral of the story.
The last thing I would say is Craig Halkett was just tremendous, and that was before he scored the winner. I thought he was just as a centre back, and that's a centre back that I kind of hoped I knew that centre back was there, but I was hoped it would come out this season. There was fear that when you looked at Stein and Stuart Finlay, and I think Hearts had about 7 or 8 guys who could play centre back, and you're thinking if Craig Halkett could be one who could move on because his availability over the last few seasons and at least last year his contract, but he is he's got himself in his best nick, and when he is fit, he's the best centre-back at the club and the perfect centre-back for Scottish football. He just heads everything, he clears everything, no nonsense, good on underrated on the ball as well. So yeah, he was obviously the difference maker yesterday with his goal, but I thought he was the best player on the pitch.
I think he's getting a knack for scoring goals now, and he's one of many potential threats from defence in the opposition box. I was listening to the post-match on Premier Sports this morning, and Mikey Stewart and Rory Hamilton were saying the same. Basically, the conversation that we had in our post-match afterwards, where we said that we had a section on Craig Halkett and an instant analysis, and it might be easy to think that that's just there because he's the difference on the day by scoring the goal right at the end. But no, that section was written before that he was the best player in the park. There was just a line added at the bottom after he scored the goal to say he won the match, basically. But yeah, it was imperious. It was one of those performances that the word imperious is reserved for.
Perfect. I thought that was an imperious podcast, and we will leave it there. Thank you very much, Craig. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening. And I will point you to the Sunday podcast, the podcast reviewing the Sunday games, because as I look, as the games have gone into the 90th minute, there'll be plenty to talk about, and there might be more nonsense that ensues in the coming minutes as I stumble my way out of this outro. Be sure to check out Tennis Podcast on Patreon. There is loads of good content. Get across there and check it out. And also, A View from the Terrace is back, so check it on BBC iPlayer. It's going to be back for 9 weeks, I think. Friday nights, or on BBC iPlayer on Friday afternoon. Myself and Rob are going to be on the show with Craig Telfer this week. So, wonder what we'll talk about. But we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, and goodbye.